This is Maureen St. Germain, and I am the author of the Akashic Records, and I'm going to be on Valley Radio, and I hope you will join me. You're going to learn about the Akashic Records and how this tool can be helping your life to be better, helping your love life to be better, helping you better with your relationships, your money situations, your business, and it's something everyone can learn. So join me on Valley Radio. I hope to see you there. Thank you. Thank you. It's such a treat. You have such beautiful energy. I'm so grateful.
Thank you, ma'am. It's always a pleasure, because people like you, when they come on my show, I get so much of things to learn from them that, it becomes like a mirror reflection of all those personalities, including yourself, that you are able to feel that sort of energy coming from me. And I think I am very much blessed to be sitting in this studio and, connecting with these wonderful people who have been planted in different parts of the planet. And, they are all working towards upliftment of the planet itself, showing path to the people. So, in fact, I feel very blessed that this energy is passing through me. And I feel very thankful that people like you are able to identify that positive energy, which is coming from my side towards you. And ultimately, everyone is benefiting from it.
Thank you for joining Asia's best radio station.
Download latest podcasts of Carry On Harry Show on iTunes.
Now shake hands with celebrities on Singapore talk show Carry On Harry.
Inviting music composers, producers, artists on board on Carry On Harry Talk Show for connecting you to worldwide audience. Write to Harry Johal at CarryonHarry.com or visit www.CarryonHarry.com for more details.
Nothing like that. I, in fact, was very eager to connect with you because since, this is going to be an interaction which is just, in a way, carry forward from what we did, a year back. And since you are here with a new book, so I was very, very much keen to know, what is going to be into the second book. In fact, I discussed about 5D technique that you mentioned in my show in last episode when your first book was released, like our first episode that we did together. So in fact,
I think it'll be awesome. Just awesome.
Correct. So first of all, Miss Maureen, I am very much thankful that you have taken out your time and you are here on Carry On Harry Show once again to talk and discuss about your new book, Opening the Akashic Records. And I'm very much sure that there will be a lot of information to be shared about this book, as I see it as a sequel to your previous work, about, what the Opening the Akashic Record book is all about.
Great. It could be considered a sequel. It's very interesting because this book was actually printed in Chinese before waking up in 5D. And the Chinese version is not the same as the version that is out in English now because I had a chance to add more material to it. So people who are listening and then looking for the Chinese version, they'll not have all the things that we put into the English version. And the new Chinese version of the English version will, I'm not sure when that will come out. And so I will get that to you as soon as possible.
Correct.
And I'll send it tonight, actually. I might even be able to send it right now, but it won't do any good. It might be confusing to have, so
correct.
I'll wait to send it.
Correct. Sorry to interrupt.
Let's go ahead.
Correct. Miss Maureen, this term Akashic, the word Akash, if we talk about, the Indian context, Akash means sky.
Right.
What does Akashic record actually means?
Well, this is a very good question because the word Akash does come from the Sanskrit sky.
Yeah.
And we understand that the person who brought this into popularity was a person by the name of Madame Blavatsky. And after her came a man by the name of Edgar Cayce, who was the most prolific and well-known psychic in America in the 30s and 40s. And he was asked, where are you getting this information? And he said, from the field of the person and from the Akashic Records. So when we say the word Akash, we're not necessarily talking about the Akashic Records. If we're talking about the Akashic Records and somebody says the word Akash, they might be referring to the Akashic Records, but it's common practice to say that word that way, but technically, the Akashic Records are not Akash. The Akashic Records are a label that we gave to energetic records or energetic imprints that exist in a dimension that is above ours, so we see it in the sky, and because it's above ours and we see it in the sky, we can call it Akashic Records or Sky Records. But to generally say Akash, the Akash is not the field of the records. The Akash could be anything that's non-material in the sky that we don't see. So we have to be careful that we don't, use the term too loosely, because there are people who say everything that is not explainable to the human eye is Akashic field. And that might be true. But the Akashic field is not the Akashic Records.
Correct. When we talk about Akashic Record, does it mean that there is some historical data which is available about individuals in these records?
Yes. The records are the records of your past lives. It can be the records of a planet. It can be the records of the possible futures that you have lined up. And so it's bigger than just the past and the present. It also contains potential. And the potential is based upon you and where you are using your energy. So for example, if you're thinking about, let's say you're finished with high school and you're going to go to college and you're looking at 3 different schools and you apply to all 3, you'll get accepted to 2. So you're still thinking about these 2 colleges, trying to decide which one you're going to go to. You are literally funding the Akashic Records with your thoughts of possible futures in either of those places. Now, let's say you decide on one, but you're really not 100% sure. And you get to the new school and you find some experience that convinces you, oh my goodness, I'm so glad I made this choice. At that point, you have dismissed all the other versions that you were funding with your hopes and desires. And all that, the girl that got away energy is gone.
Correct. So, do you mean to say these Akashic Records can, uplift and benefit individuals as well as the community itself? And if yes, how?
Okay, I'm really glad you asked that. And the answer is yes. And it's very interesting. Some people say about the records that they will uplift you and they will improve your life. But here's the truth. When you access the records, they give you knowledge and they give you wisdom. They answer the proverbial why. Why did something happen? Now, that knowledge changes you. There's an old phrase, knowledge implies power. But I would say to you that when you receive this knowledge, your opinion of the situation changes. Because you change your opinion, you change your bias and you change your belief system. And a classic example goes back to Edgar Cayce, where he was a devout Christian and he did not believe in reincarnation. It was not part of his realm of possibilities. And in the records, when he was in this trance and he was asked to do a session on himself, he was told who he was in previous lifetimes. And he didn't even believe in reincarnation. And so as the information came forward, he was hearing something that did not fit his paradigm. And because it did not fit his paradigm, it took him by surprise and caused him to shift and change. So as you gain access to the Akashic Records, you gain more capacity to understand the world around you. And there's numerous instances of the ability of a person to expand their awareness and their capacity after they have had this kind of experience. So in Edgar Casey's case, he eventually expanded his belief system to include reincarnation, and definitely believed it before he ever left this planet. So this is an example of someone with a narrow belief system and expanding it. Now in your part of the world, reincarnation is taught as an accepted feature, and we in the West have not had the benefit of this, these ancient traditions that have taught us these things. So for this example, it was quite profound. And there are other examples of people who have huge shifts in their self-awareness, and when they do, they literally shift and they literally transform. Now, did the records change them? No. Their accepting of the information changed them.
Correct.
So the records don't change us, but using the records changes us. Just like if you go to the gym and work out, you don't say the machine changed me. You say I exercised and I changed myself.
Absolute. The book also talks about, record keepers. So who are the record keepers? What do you mean by this term record keeper? Meet your record keepers and discover your soul purpose.
Well, the actual record keepers are ancient beings. There's three categories of beings that are in the records. The first category is beings that initially chose to make that their expression in creation. And they are what I would call permanent reference librarians. So they're holding the energy of the records. And if you could imagine that they actually hold it in their consciousness, so they're holding the records in their body, so to speak. And then there's another layer of beings who come for a period of time to have the experience of working in the records as an element of service. And the third category is beings that come in the same category as these that come for service, but then they come in service with the idea that they are going to incarnate on the earth at this time so that they can be of greater service. Because if you've been in the records as a being and then you decide to come into a human body, your capacity to do this work is far greater than someone else. And I have had people who fit this description in my classes.
Correct. How a record keeper can really, help any individual, who is interested to know about their Akashic record, like you are conducting classes and workshops related to this. Tell us about that aspect. Like say any individual walks to you and he is very keen to understand, what are his or her Akashic records, and how does a record keeper can really, solve that query which the person is in curiosity, approaching a personality like you.
Well, number one, I highly recommend that a person learns how to open their own records. So, and the reason for that is because then it's a resource that you have whenever you're filled with fear or anxiety or worry. And if you're in the records every day, that knowledge elevates you. So, like any devotional practice, whether it's meditation or yoga or chanting, you gain something by taking time to do the practice, because the record keepers will continue to advise you in a very specialized way for your purposes, for your highest good. And to that end, you get to choose things that you might not choose otherwise. Now, before I get too far, I want to tell your audience that I will be teaching in China. I'll be teaching Akashic Records in Chinese. I'll have a translator. in Xi'an, April 1st. So anybody who wants to come can attend that class in Xi'an, China. Now, as far as helping a person personally, what happens is the record keepers will often tell you things that you suspect are true, but you don't know they're true, or you don't want to believe they're true. Like the woman who asked in the records about her last job. And the record keepers started off by saying to her, you left them in the lurch, and you gave them a very bad taste in the mouth because they didn't have the staffing to fill all your appointments, and with short notice, it was very difficult for them, and it was very difficult for the support staff because they're the ones who had to deal with the complaints.
Correct. Miss Maureen,
when she reported this to me, she said, I was so upset with them. I felt justified in behaving this way because they'd given me so much work. But when the record keepers explained to me what I had done, I really felt bad. Excuse me. And that was very important for her to hear. So that helped her be a better person. She actually went back to them and apologized for her behavior.
Correct. Is there a theory like this one that that let's say if a person is having a reincarnated life, but in modern times the sole purpose, how does it befits the same the one which was maybe a few hundred years back? The person at that time, the culture was different, the society requirements were different, but in today's scenario the society requirements and the culture and the living might be totally different. So how does Akashic records of past befit into the current times?
Well, for one thing, our belief systems are still very narrow. We as humans still think of ourselves as one unit instead of as vast beings. So that's the first thing.
Correct.
Secondly, in modern times, we are at the cusp of the Kali Yuga. So we're ending that cycle. And one of the biggest reasons we have been given access to the records, because ancient times, you had to be very specialized, you had to be a deep student or a guru yourself to access the records. In modern times, anybody can access the records. So why would this dispensation be granted? And the answer is because we're on the return home and the end of this cycle, and we're moving to a new age where the rules and the game are different, and they're enough different that people need to catch up. And our spirituality and our technology are not a parity. So our spirituality needs to catch up with our technology. And what that means is, if we own a clothing factory and we are manufacturing clothes for people in the West, if our spirituality and our technology are at parity, we won't be able to pay people substandard wages because we will have spirituality that tells us all humans are equal and that we shouldn't take unfair advantage of a culture that doesn't have the resources we do. And so that's an example. Another example is if a man in the West owns a factory that makes bread, but they add something to the bread to make it extra tasty, but they discover that additive is poisonous, he might not take it out. He might just say, well, you're worried about that, don't eat my bread. And if his spirituality and the technology are in parity, the ability to have that additive is also empowering him to have responsibility for it. And when he learns that it causes illness, then he takes it out and he finds another substitute for it. So those are the kinds of things that in modern times we're being accelerated through the transformation to the new era, the new way of being, where we're fully plugged into God and we have awareness of each other and our connection to the earth and to the sky, so to speak.
Correct. You also emphasize that, it's very important for one to learn, the 5D method, which was discussed in the previous book. And it's going to help a person, learn more about Akashic Records. How are they interlinked and how are they interconnected?
Well, the Akashic Records are located in the 11th dimension, which is a very refined dimension. And the dimensions are nested like Russian dolls. So if you're in third, you can peer into second and first, and people do. If you're in fifth, you can peer into third dimension. And 11th dimension, we actually use a gateway or a special portal to get to the 11th dimension. We're not climbing, from 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 to 11. We're literally using a shortcut that's made especially for this purpose. But in fifth dimension, the difference is that we are non-judgmental and we have no biases that hold us back. When we're in that state, we can receive the information from the 11th dimension with greater clarity than we can if we're in third dimension and we still have biases.
Correct. So in order to incorporate this kind of higher awareness about our own self, what normally is the procedure or what normally is required to qualify for anybody to learn about their Akashic Records, to get to do that dimension where they can know things, what's going to happen in future, and how they can really make a difference to their own life and the people around them?
Okay, so there's multiple questions here. I'll start with the one that's the biggest one on my mind, and that is the Akashic Records information is not a form of psychic prediction. So you don't always get told the future, but you can be told what the outcomes of situations will be or what the energy around a situation is. Now, how do you qualify? This is the amazing thing. Anyone can learn. Anyone has permission from on high to learn this technique because of the fact that we are moving to another way of being, a fifth dimensional being, and we need to have resources to give us the fast track. Anybody can learn to drive, right?
Yeah.
But if we have a GPS, we can pretty much be sure that we can get where we need to go. And that's like the Akashic Records. The Akashic Records gives you the GPS. It gives you the best plan, the best case scenario. But you still have to choose that. It doesn't make you drive that way. It simply gives you that information. And the difference between a GPS and the Akashic Records is the GPS is sometimes wrong. And in the Akashic Records, that information is always accurate. And the benefit of working in the 5D arena and learning how to connect with your higher self is that you have a way to validate that information through your higher self connection. So the qualifier is simply the desire to learn. Now, once in a while, somebody says, yeah, but what about somebody who has, bad intentions? If they can get their records, maybe they can, make trouble or something. And I have to laugh at this because a person's energy and their focus, their intention or their vibration is the lead. So if you have an intention to somehow use information for harm, it's not possible. It's almost like the system has its own fail-safe. And number one, when you get into the Akashic Records, you feel so much love. Now, even if maybe you were mad at somebody and you really wanted them to feel bad because you were hurting from what they did to you, and you're in that mindset. When you're in the Akashic Records and you start asking about that, number one, you're going to feel so much love that energy of feeling bad or feeling like the get even energy, it's gone. It's gone in an instant. You don't even have attachment to that. So you can't misuse this information. It doesn't happen. It's not possible.
Correct.
And secondly, let me just clarify, your intention limits your ability to get, information that you might be able to misuse.
Correct. Coming back to the book, Opening the Akashic Records, which is a new release from you after your previous book, Waking Up in 5D. This book takes into journey of what sort of field? Is it teaching somebody to understand what Akashic Records are, or is it helping people to learn how they can open the Akashic Record? What's the journey of this book actually?
Very good. The beginning of the book explains who the record keepers are, and why it's useful. Then they explain who the masters are that we work with in the records. And then finally it takes you through a step-by-step process that gives you the teaching tools that you need in order to learn. And my method isn't the only method that's out there, but it is one of the most powerful methods because we ask for beings only of 100% God light. We insist that we're working specifically with the ascended masters themselves, and we don't just say the masters, we say them by name. In the system that I work with, we also have additional tools like the higher self connection, and I teach people markers so that they know. And finally, we use what's called opening remarks. And opening remarks are statements or sentences that come through that are at the beginning of the session before you actually start to write any questions. So when you're taught to open your own records, you will then start, you may have made a list of your questions, but you haven't written them out in the records. So you have your list handy, and then you open in the records, and then when you start to write, they're going to say things like, you are so loved and cherished. We want you to know that what you're doing for humanity is very important. Even though you sometimes struggle to make it all work, we want you to know how important your work is. For example, they might start out with that. Meanwhile, your number one question was, should I stay in this line of work? It's very frustrating.
Yes, please.
And so the idea is that when you receive what's called opening remarks, you're getting the answers to some of your questions.
Correct.
Does that? Yeah.
Correct. Several people might be having, conflicting, doubts in their mind that, Akashic record is something, which is, like you say, is in 11th dimension. Normally people live in 3 dimension, or maybe some, are a bit ahead, maybe enter 4th, or maybe, reach till 5. How would you like to, convince people that Akashic record is something that can really make a difference to their life? Means from a common man's point of view, if let's say I walk to somebody and I say that there are Akashic records that exist which can help you to soulfully connect with your purpose of life. So the person living in the 3rd dimensional who might be running daily chores, doing their work and all, how can we really sell this idea that Akashic record is meant for your own benefit, it's meant for your own upliftment?
Okay, so let's say you're talking to a businessman and he's contemplating doing business with a new company and he's trying to make a certain thing happen and he's looking at 2 or 3 different companies. He can go in the records and ask his record keepers, what is the ideal company for me to work with? Am I to work with this company? Am I to work with this company? And so on. When you're hiring people, you can ask in the records, is this the highest and best choice for me? Once in a while, you'll be told, none of these people are a good choice. You need to keep looking. So those are the kinds of business relationships that you can make decisions in.
Correct. So it's just like a consultation that a individual can have with their record keepers and get to know more about what's going to be more beneficial for them in the long run, rather than going in for just the monetary profits.
Exactly. It is always going to give you the best case scenario in the long run, and sometimes that's counterintuitive.
Correct.
And I'll use myself as an example because I truly only wanted to be with someone as a beloved and have them, me and that person be in New York. And when I met my future husband, he was a West Coast guy. And over time, we have come back to New York City. And I never thought that he would ever do that. And I did not want to partner with someone who would pull me out of the city that I love. And the record keepers told me to build a bridge. That had never occurred to me. And what they meant was that I could have a home in both cities and we could, travel the world. And that's what we did.
Correct. Another question which is coming to my mind is that people might be saying that it seems that that it's somewhere very much similar to the concept of astrology, which also predicts that a certain path is going to be good or bad for them. How does Akashic record differentiate from astrology, or are they similar, or are they interconnected with each other? How would you define this?
Oh, this is a very good question. First of all, I am a big believer in astrology, both Vedic astrology and the Western astrology. And I believe that astrology predicts by templates. So there's a template and there's overlays, and how those templates work together is like when you're in the theater and they're putting various color slides over the light. Mm-hmm. The Akashic Records is different in that each situation and circumstance is different. Each situation and circumstance will give you a specific piece of information. And the specific information will surprise you. For example, when my husband and I were looking at moving to a city in America called San Diego, mm-hmm. and we made a list of like 10 cities, and then my husband just numbered them, 1 through 10, and I didn't know which city was which. And he asked me to rank the top 3, which I did. And then on each one, I gave him some feedback that was coming from the records without knowing the name of the city. Mm-hmm. And then when we got into the city itself, we asked about neighborhoods. Should we be in this neighborhood or that neighborhood? And the record keeper said about one particular neighborhood, this neighborhood would be fine if you have a dog. And I looked at him and I said, that makes no sense. But that's what they're telling me. When we checked to see which city it was or what neighborhood it was the neighborhood that was adjacent to where all the homeless people are. And if you were walking outside, you might feel unsafe with all the homeless people wandering around. And if you had a dog, you'd feel more secure. And that would never have occurred to me to say that to him or to myself.
Correct. So here I want to remind my listeners that right now we are in touch with book author, psychic healer Maureen Saint Germain, and who has written the book Opening the Germain, who has written this book Opening the Akashic Records, which is now available for anybody to know more, understand more about the Akashic Records. And if you really want to connect with her, I'll be inviting Miss Maureen to tell us what are the platforms where they can connect with you and get to know more about their own Akashic Records in to uplift their own individual self.
Thank you. So you can go to my website, MaureenSaintGermain.com, MaureenSaintGermain.com, and you can order the book there. You can order the book through all the normal outlets. It is also available in Chinese. I highly recommend, if you can read English, to get the English version because it's more updated. And it would be my deep pleasure if you choose to read the book and learn a little bit more. It is possible to teach yourself how to open the records through this book, and will give you an enormous amount of information, and it will be a lot of fun too.
Fantastic. That was really lovely interaction with you, and I hope that more and more people will try to learn how they can really learn from Akashic Records by getting in touch with their record keepers. And in a way, if each and every individual is working on their sole purpose, and I think it can ultimately help the whole planet itself, because people won't be distracted from the real purpose, rather than following a purpose which is copied from other people by getting inspired from them. If we follow our own purpose, we'll be more aligned with our own self, and we'll be more aligned with the energy of the planet itself. And people like you who are helping out individuals to understand and spread awareness about Akashic Records, I think you're doing a wonderful job. So it was lovely, Miss Maureen, and especially thank you once again from CarryonHarry Studios that you came on the show. You gave us so much of information about Akashic Records, and of course the wonderful book of which we have a lot of insights packed up into this book. I hope the readers will be really gaining a lot of insights about how their life can be changed by getting in touch with something called Akashic Records that we have discussed today.
Thank you, and I feel the same way about the work you're doing. You're helping people by exploring these kinds of information. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for being in tune with Best Talk Show, CarryonHarry, with entertainment editor Harry Johal. on Bala Bala Radio, inviting music composers, producers, artists on board on Carry On Harry Talk Show for connecting you to worldwide audience. Write to Harry Johal at CarryonHarry.com or visit www.CarryonHarry.com for more details.